Dear Dad, it's me, Christian. I haven't talked to you in a long time. It's been a while since you wrote your last letter, so I thought I'd follow up with another. I'm searching for you right now, and I will not stop until you are found. I love you very much, and I will not be discouraged by your silence. Your son, Christian.
Christian looked up from his writing and sighed to himself softly. The warmth from the fire above him shined like a beacon of hope as he sailed through outer space. He carefully placed his worn number 2 pencil onto the bottom of the basket and folded his letter into a paper airplane. He leaned over the crinkly woven basket and smiled to himself as he gazed out at the nebulas before him in his hot air balloon. Glistening stars could be seen twinkling like joyous laughter in the distance, and comets soared past in a gorgeous display that lit up the deep dark of space. Christian pulled his arm back and threw the little aircraft into space, where it sailed onward in one direction forever. He knew it would find his father. He turned to the burner above his head, carefully lowered the flame using a small black knob, and pressed on through the mysterious expanse of the universe, in search of his dad. It didn't matter how far he had to go. He didn't stop for a second. The balloon descended slightly as the flame died down, and Christian carefully steered the vessel through the nebula ahead. Though he was only 9, Christian had been sailing his balloon for as long as he could remember. He had passed by planets and stars, nebulas and comets, all hoping to find his father again. He only remembered one memory of his dad when he was young: the kind face, the joyous laugh, the warmth within his kind eyes, and an authority that loved him no matter what he went through. From day one, Christian's father had been there for him, and the young boy longed to be with him again. Once the flame within the burner had gone out, Christian crawled up into the balloon itself and looked about the inside. He had hung every note he had ever received from his father within, and every time he looked at them, it felt like a sense of pure wonder and joy. It had been 6 years since his father had left for his important business somewhere out there. He wrote to Christian often in letters, and the young boy enjoyed reading each. Every one of them finished with the promise he would return, one day. The child crawled up into a hammock attached to the sides of the balloon and snuggled into his blankets. He was going to find his father. He knew it. Christian awoke to the sounds of a gentle nip on his face. A soft breeze could be heard whistling in the outer space air. The young boy yawned and stretched his legs. He carefully crawled down the sides of the balloon and reignited the burner after reaching the basket. The flame sparked to life as the balloon rose through the air once again, climbing higher and higher into the beautiful world that was outer space. After consulting a compass and a map, Christian nodded to himself and checked the basket carefully to ensure the sandbags were properly attached. He didn't want to lose any of them. His father had gifted him the balloon when he was young and had taught Christian everything he needed to know about flying in space. As he checked the sandbags for holes and fraying, a large shadow cast over Christian's balloon, and the young boy looked up to see a massive sign right in front of an expansive emptiness that stretched on as far as the eye could see. The sign stated, "Thank you for visiting the Oort Cloud. Come again soon." The boy nodded and saluted the sign as he sailed past it and into the unknown. Space had been so friendly until this point. What's the worst that could happen? As he traveled through the mysterious open black of space, the winds began to pick up, pressing the balloon forward faster than ever before, and Christian hoisted himself onto the sides and looked out at the emptiness with determination. He consulted his compass again and climbed back down, accidentally kicking his radio to one side of the basket, causing a brief flurry of static to rush out. Now came the challenging part. His father had read to him all about the realm outside of the solar system, and how dark and mysterious it was, how daunting unexplored territory could be. But Christian knew he had to keep searching for his father, and nothing would stop him from doing just that.
Mayday! Mayday!
Christian turned to his static-filled radio. Did he just hear a distress signal? He rushed over to the radio and adjusted the knob worriedly.
Mayday! Mayday! My vessel is sinking! I'm losing oxygen! Someone, anyone, help!
Christian immediately increased the burner's temperature, brightening the flame even more. He raised an old police microphone attached to the radio and said,
"This is Christian Z. Wattson of the Fateful Flyer. Where are you?"
I can see your burner.
said the voice on the radio.
I'll ignite mine now.
Christian looked up, and through the black he could see a sputtering flicker of orange light off in the distance, and immediately guided his balloon toward it.
"I'm on my way."
The sputtering flame was fading more frequently, and the balloon was sinking faster and faster. Christian got closer, and within moments the sounds of a panicked voice could be heard through the darkness.
Mayday! Mayday!
Christian pressed on, and when he was close enough to the balloon, he yelled,
"Jump!"
There was a leap of a silhouette, and a hoarse voice said,
Come on, let's go.
Christian didn't question the stranger and steered his balloon away as fast as possible. He could hear the burner on the other air balloon coughing and choking as the flame turned inward. The faithful flyer sailed through the black of space as the sputtering flames sank into the darkness. The explosion was thunderous and rattled Christian's balloon as the shockwave of the detonated aircraft spread throughout the darkness, creating a frightening sight of orange and red. How could this happen? The young boy turned to the ground, and there, laying piled in a heap, was a woman, with scars and soot all over her body, almost as if a savage animal had attacked her. She looked up at Christian wildly and said,
Come on, let's go.
She got up and tried to steer the balloon around, but the young boy grabbed her arms. This wasn't her balloon.
What are you doing?
Yelled the woman wildly as she laughed hysterically and tried to steer the balloon again. She checked her cloak and pulled at her hair as she spoke, and the young boy looked at her with genuine concern.
"Out of where?"
Asked Christian.
Out of here.
Screamed the woman as she laughed hysterically through the empty black of space. The firelight of the balloon burner illuminated her older face.
Society has gone downhill. It's not worth it. I can't do this anymore.
"What are you saying?"
Asked Christian worriedly. The woman grasped the basket weakly, coughing violently over the edge, then looked up at Christian through her sagging eyes and mud-encrusted body.
"What you need now is a friend,"
said Christian with a warm smile as he gazed into the eyes of the anxious woman. The older woman stopped her insanity and stared into the young boy's kind smile.
A friend?
She asked with a croak.
"Yeah,
Said Christian.
I'm on a mission to find my father. Would you care to join me?"
The woman thought for a moment, then smiled a toothy smile. Even though her pearly whites had turned yellow and many were missing, Christian didn't care. He would ensure no harm came to her for the rest of the voyage.
What's our heading?
Asked the woman as she gazed into Christian's innocent, kind eyes.
"We head north until we see the light again." Dear Dad, I wanted to write to tell you that I have left the Orc Cloud and I have found a new friend to accompany me on my journey to find you. I hope you will meet her when I arrive. Her name is Garcia, and she has been searching for her father for 30 years. She gave up halfway on her journey and turned back, but I decided we can search together for our fathers. I wonder if you two know each other. I can't wait to see you again. Love you, Christian.
What are you doing?
Asked Garcia as she leaned over to look at Christian's writing. The burner above them radiated and the red and white canvas soared overhead.
I write letters to my father to remind him that I will find him. It's like talking to him when we are apart.
When was the last letter received?
Asked Garcia curiously. Christian sighed.
Not for a while. I assume he read it, but he hasn't had time to respond. He'll send one, you'll see.
Garcia nodded, and Christian packed up his writing equipment and threw the paper airplane into the darkness ahead.
How do you know the letter will make it to your father?
Asked the woman with a frown as she watched the paper airplane fly out of sight.
I know it will.
Said Christian with an innocent smile that radiated like childhood itself, and Garcia smiled back. The hot air balloon continued on its way through space. The fire burned bright through the dark, reflecting harsh shadows onto the basket that they stood within.
Look!
Cried Garcia as she pointed a bony finger into the darkness. Christian peered over the side of the basket and squinted into the black. Blinking red lights could be seen through the darkness, pulsing sequentially. almost as if they were trying to signal to them, desperately trying to pull them over to where they resided. As the faithful flyer got closer, it became apparent the pulsing lights were a part of a large runway attached to a dark, cold space station, with ornate metal arches swooping above its gargantuan disc shape. A low hum could be heard emitting from the station as it drifted silently in the black.
What luck!
Said Garcia as she stared at the space station through her wrinkled face.
Civilization!
Let's go meet them,
said Christian excitedly. His youthful face was filled with excitement. The balloon slowly descended to the runway, and they carefully exited their vessel once everything was tied down. Though the lights blinked and the space station drifted, nobody came out to greet them.
That's strange.
Christian remarked as he looked about the runway.
Shouldn't be there a crew to look out for our vessel?
You've got a point,
said Garcia, who also looked around in confusion.
Where is everyone?
They cautiously walked around the empty runway and observed the spacecraft parked on its deep black surface. From helicopters to spaceships, just about every mode of transportation could be seen parked in this large space station runway. How could there not be people?
Look!
Said Garcia from across the way, and Christian followed the sound of her voice. His light footsteps echoed throughout the space station's eerily silent entryway. They approached an airlock and Garcia kicked it aggressively, causing steam to gush out of the corners as the door slid open.
Good work, Garcia,
said Christian with a grin.
Now let's see where everybody is.
Together they walked down the cold, abandoned space station corridors, past fizzled computer consoles and loose wires sparking in the ceiling.
What do you suppose happened to this place?
Murmured Garcia as she gazed at scratches and burn marks covering the walls and floor.
I don't know,
said Christian as he quickened his step.
But whatever happened, it's clear that these people are in danger. We must help them.
Garcia opened her mouth to say something, then shook her head and raced after Christian. They continued down the twisted, narrow halls of the space station. The metal tile pounded below them with every step they took. Thump, 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 thump. As they ran, the state of the space station became worse. With every turn, the station fell into a higher degree of disrepair, and upon rounding the last corner, they stopped. The walls were charred black, and electrical cables were everywhere, sparking dangerously around a perfectly placed pineapple, sitting dead center of the hallway. It was a perfect yellow, with accompanying green leaves at the top. Perhaps it was how random it was. Perhaps it was perfection. But Christian couldn't help feeling uneasy about the pineapple's presence in the hallway, almost as if he were expecting it to do something to him. Garcia stared at the pineapple too, then said,
We have to keep moving.
I don't know,
whispered Christian as he stared at the pineapple.
There's something wrong here.
Oh, come on, Christian. It's just a pineapple,
said Garcia with a snort.
I understand how you feel. This place gives me the heebie-jeebies, but we have to keep pressing on.
If you say so,
mumbled Christian as he carefully stepped over the pineapple.
Look, you're fine,
laughed Garcia as she pushed the pineapple out of the way with her foot, her fear and fright completely forgotten.
See? There's nothing to be afraid of.
Christian stared off into space and thought as memories swirled around him, back to the year his father had left.
Come on, Christian. It's just a snack. What's wrong with that?
Asked the neighbor kid as they all stared at Christian after a long game of kick the can.
When will you learn? You don't have to be nervous about everything.
Something feels wrong about that food,
said Christian as he stared at the odd stick in his hand.
Come on, Christian. Have a bite.
No, I don't want it.
Grow up, Christian. Quit acting like a child and man up. All the adults are doing it.
I don't want to be like the adults.
The children stared at Christian for a second, then laughed. One girl walked up to him and said,
Then you will never amount to anything.
She snatched the stick out of Christian's hand and chewed it aggressively as she laughed like a maniac, and the memory of the kid swirled out of Christian's memory.
Christian!
Asked Garcia as she waved a wrinkly hand before his face.
Hello? We still have a way to go.
The young boy shook his head and looked around at the burnt space station corridor.
Sorry, I must have zoned out.
It's all right,
said Garcia as she looked about the mysterious hall.
Come on, let's go.
Their footsteps faded away, and the corridor faded back to silence. Though nothing seemed to be wrong when they left, one important thing had changed. Though the burn marks were still there and the cables hung from the ceiling sparking, the floor was strangely empty. All that could be seen was a clean patch on the ground where the pineapple had been moments before it had vanished without leaving a trace.
Dear Dad, I'm still searching for you. I'm investigating the space station beyond the Oort cloud with my new friend Garcia. We are taking a quick detour to figure out where the people at the station went. We found their vehicles, but they're nowhere to be found. I hope we hear from you soon. I love you. Christian.
As the young boy finished folding his airplane, Garcia approached.
How will that thing make it to space from here?
It will find its way.
Reassured Christian as he tossed it down the hallway, watching it zigzag through the complex corridors as if an unseen force were guiding it.
Are you sure?
Asked Garcia uneasily, looking at her grimy nails through her dirty hair.
Positive.
Garcia shrugged and sighed.
All right then.
They rounded another corner, and the hallway abruptly ended. The path of charred walls and sparking wires ended at a massive door with multiple locks bolted into the walls. A single bank safe wheel sat in the center before Christian and Garcia, and the two gazed upon the complex safe. Wires continued to fizzle, and time seemed to stand still as they stood there silently for a moment, listening to the electricity spark.
I don't get it.
Murmured Christian.
Surely the people who arrived came through this way. There isn't an alternative path.
He turned to look down the charred hall once again as if he were expecting another route to appear.
I don't think there's another option,
Mumbled Garcia as she frowned and turned to squint down the hall.
There has to be. I know it.
Said Christian as he turned back and approached the door. He carefully grabbed both ends of the smooth, cold metal and tried to turn the wheel.
It isn't going to do anything,
Said Garcia.
It's a bank vault. There isn't a way to open it without knowing the combination.
Christian turned with all his might and heard a click inside the metal frame as the wheel slowly rotated.
Can you please help me?
He begged. His strained voice echoed throughout the empty space station corridors and rattled the metal walls with a piercing resonance.
If you say so, but I'm telling you, it isn't going to do you any good,
said Garcia as she stepped forward. Click. The wheel rotated the rest of the way, and immediately the door swung open with a heavy thud.
Welcome to the check-in center.
Christian and Garcia jumped out of their skin and looked around wildly as a faint, static-filled voice echoed throughout the once quiet hall.
Please follow the arrows directing you to the next station. Your balloons will be provided at the gate. Thank you for visiting the arena.
The two looked around as many neon arrows appeared through the doorway attached to both walls, directing them to step through into the unknown.
Balloons? I already have a balloon.
They were probably referring to something else,
said Garcia. The two walked down the clean, pristine path guided by the neon arrows. The sounds of their footsteps rattled off the metal walls, and after rounding a corner, Christian found himself face to face with an older man in a high-ranking military uniform. At least a dozen medals of honor sat upon his ornate uniform, accompanied by golden frills on the shoulders. The man didn't seem to have a definite age. He couldn't be a day over 30, but a wisdom in his eyes suggested he had been around far longer than that. Their presence didn't seem to startle the man in the slightest. In fact, he appeared to be expecting them.
Attention!
He said, and Christian straightened up.
I am Colonel Michael Katz, and I am your officer for the beginning of your journey.
He formally turned on his heel and marched through a passage behind him, with Christian and Garcia following close behind.
I bring a message from your father, Christian.
The young boy straightened up a little more, for he hadn't heard a reply in a long time.
He says that you are being called to his house to take part in a banquet of astronomical proportions,
continued Michael.
I am?
Asked Christian hopefully.
Indeed,
said Michael.
Unfortunately, however, there is a catch.
They exited the passage through another set of doors and onto a docking bay where many hot air balloons sat in tow, tied to the space docks that stood before them. The young boy caught sight of the faithful flyer's red and white stripes and immediately ran toward it.
Thank you for the invitation, and I'll gladly accept.
Suddenly, the colonel appeared abruptly in front of Christian, and the young boy stopped in his tracks.
There is a catch, young one,
Sighed Michael.
You are invited to your father's house for a banquet under the condition that you make it there in one piece.
The boy stared up at the military officer with his innocent eyes and asked,
What do you mean, in one piece?
The military officer unsheathed his sword from his belt and raised it high. He paused, then in one fluent motion, brought it down between them. The universe shook and static glitched around them as reality distorted for a brief second.
What's happening?
Asked Christian as his young eyes darted around at the faint crackling of reality around him.
You haven't truly entered life yet,
said Michael as he sheathed his sword.
You will be presented with 7 tests. Each one has been constructed to challenge you by the one who trapped you here in the first place.
The officer turned formally and said,
I will not speak of the name. All you need to know is this individual would like nothing more than for everyone to rot in this false reality forever.
He turned to Christian.
Your father wants you to come home, Christian. Are you willing to brave the dangers and complete the 7 tests?
The boy nodded enthusiastically.
Anything to see my father again.
Very well,
said Michael. He escorted them over to the dock, where the faithful flyer was in tow, and saluted the two.
May love take you onward. Peace.
He marched toward the dock and stood straight as he watched them slowly fly away in the hot air balloon.
That was helpful,
said Garcia sarcastically, her wrinkled face filled with amusement.
I agree,
said Christian in a serious tone.
We have 7 tests to complete to attend my father's banquet. We haven't a moment to lose.
Garcia shook her head behind the young boy's back, and within moments they were off, soaring through space on their way to the first test.
Dear Dad, I have received your information from Colonel Michael Katz, and I've graciously accepted, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Your son, Christian.
So, wait. If we're trapped in a false reality, how are we going to escape it?
Asked Garcia.
Logically, that doesn't make any sense. How can we both be stuck here?
Christian looked up as he tossed his paper airplane into outer space and turned to smile at the older woman with his childlike innocence.
I know we'll find a way. My father knows what he's doing.
Does he?
Asked Garcia, but Christian shook his head.
You haven't met him yet. I know what he does. He honestly cares, and he wants me to come home to meet him. You'll see.
He squinted through the dark and smiled excitedly.
I see something up ahead.
He carefully steered the faithful flyer toward a docking port similar to the space stations and sailed the balloon to a massive metal bar barricading the entryway from the rest of space.
Welcome to the first test,
echoed the static-filled female voice.
Please leave your balloons at the toll gate. When your task is completed, you can proceed to the next test. Good luck.
There was a sharp buzz of a ground loop, then silence. Christian carefully landed the balloon and put out the gas burner. He slid back down into the basket and stepped out onto the abandoned metal platform with Garcia.
I fail to see how completing 7 tasks stated by a weirdo we don't even know is going to improve our situation,
whispered Garcia as she looked around the docking port.
It will,
promised Christian.
You just have to trust my father.
If you say so,
murmured Garcia. They stepped out onto the metal and approached a giant entryway with a massive wrought-iron letters stating, Test Number 1. They stepped through the entryway, and immediately the environment changed. An ornate dining room was on the other side of the dark, foreboding entryway. Various helpings of food could be seen heaped on plates, and a guest book was propped up on an ornate wooden pedestal off to the side. Despite the freshness of the food, there wasn't anyone there. Everything was silent save for a crackling in the fireplace and a faint hum of incandescent bulbs from above.
I stand corrected,
said Garcia as she ran to the food.
Your father was right. He did prepare a banquet.
Christian smiled and ran over to Garcia.
What did I tell you? He always keeps his promises.
Garcia reached over for an apple and happily bit into it.
This is amazing. Here, have some.
Christian gratefully accepted an orange from Garcia and looked at it. How vibrant it looked. How ornate. How luxurious. He raised it to his mouth, but froze as he turned to the sitting area by the fire. There were dozens of yellow pineapples resting on the ground, each spread 1 foot apart. The uneasiness Christian had felt at the space station returned, and he lowered the orange at once and carefully set it back onto the bowl.
What's wrong with you?
Asked Garcia with a mouthful of food.
Can't you see we made it? You can relax now. We're at a banquet.
Except Michael. He said there were 7 tests,
Said Christian.
and we only entered the first one.
But aren't you hungry?
Asked Garcia. She turned to yellow fruits resting eerily on the ground, perfectly spaced apart, not a speck of dirt on any of their vibrant skins.
Never mind them. They're just pineapples.
Right.
Said Christian.
Looks like I've lost my appetite. I don't think we should be eating this food.
He gazed at the eerily perfect fruit and all of the assorted meats, cheeses, and vegetables, all neatly assorted across the long table.
Oh, come off it, Christian. Since when has food not meant to be eaten?
Scoffed Garcia between mouthfuls of food.
Pineapples are making me feel...
Stop talking about the pineapples. I'm trying to eat.
Said Garcia as she marched over and kicked one of the pineapples over.
See? There's nothing wrong with it. Now, quit bothering me.
The young boy stood there watching Garcia stuff her face full of food.
I think I'm gonna look around a bit.
He said. Said Garcia. Christian sighed and went down the ornate hall, carefully stepping over more pineapples, sitting eerily on the floor. There were a couple of locked doors on either end of the hall, and after rounding a corner, he found a massive wooden door with a golden handle. A neon red exit sign hung above it with a golden plaque that stated, "Don't forget to pack a meal for your journey." A meal? In an instant, Christian's memory swirled.
Don't forget to pack a lunch, Christian.
Said his mother as Christian put on his backpack.
Okay, Mom.
Said the young boy. He reached for a fruit bowl and grabbed an apple to place in his sack. When his mother turned, he carefully grabbed a second and palmed it sneakily until he was out of the house. He ate the second apple as he went. In an instant, Christian returned to reality, his hand raised with an apple in his hand, his mouth filled with the savory juices of the sweet red fruit. He smiled a little, took another bite of the apple, and allowed happiness to fill his being as he enjoyed his snack.
You know, it took you longer than I anticipated.
Christian turned and stared down the empty hall full of pineapples, but no one was there.
Hello, Christian.
Said the voice as the pineapple closest to the young boy quivered slightly.
You talk?
Asked Christian, his concerns about the eerie fruit forgotten, almost as if he were under a spell.
Of course.
Said the pineapple. In an instant, the pineapple sprouted arms and carefully stood up, revealing shoulders, a chest, and legs, hidden away below the floor, almost as if it had been in a hole in the ground. The pineapple's body comprised of a neon yellow blazer, like the tint of the fruit's vibrant skin. Underneath the blazer was a green tie placed perfectly underneath a brown dress shirt. The pineapple put its hands in its pockets and approached Christian casually. It pulled out an apple from its pocket and handed it to him.
Here you go, little one. You need your fruit to be big and strong one day.
The fruit's calm, composed voice did not worry Christian as he took the apple without question and bit into it, a bit quicker than the first time.
Would you like another?
Christian wiped his mouth, then turned to the door.
I better be going.
Going? But you haven't eaten your apple yet.
Said the pineapple as he handed Christian another red, juicy apple.
Well, I guess I can have one more.
Murmured Christian as he reached for the fruit.
Good boy.
Said the pineapple.
Let us go to the banquet hall. You can try other foods besides apples there.
He took Christian by the hand and gently led him over toward the first room in the first test, further and further away from the door with the exit sign on it.
Ah, here we are.
Said the pineapple as he gestured to Garcia as she ferociously gnawed at a chicken drumstick. Christian smiled at all the food before him. It was simply marvelous. He could feel a hunger within him growing. He shook this feeling out of his head.
I really must be going,
he said.
I have to visit my father.
Why would you ever want to do that?
Laughed the pineapple softly.
You could stay here and feast like a king.
I don't know,
said Christian as he turned back to the food. It looked appetizing, but the pineapple's smooth words were a little suspicious. Should he trust it?
I'm not sure what my father would say about this.
As if in response, a paper airplane soared through the room at an alarming rate toward the pineapple, and when it contacted the vibrant yellow fruit, its sharp tip pierced the skin and drove its sharp, needle-like tip right through it, spraying juices in its wake as it exited the other side, causing the pineapple's body to collapse like a rag doll onto the ornate floor. Christian ran over, grabbed the airplane, and in big bold letters was one word: run. The young boy looked up as all the pineapples within the ornate feasting hall rose out of the ground, supported by bodies of their own. Their yellow blazers, green ties, and eerily perfect fruit heads turned toward them with their arms outstretched.
Run, Garcia!
Yelled Christian. The woman did not bat an eye. She kept gnawing at the food sitting at the banquet table. Christian ran around the table, grabbed the old woman's hand, and pulled her along with all the strength he could muster.
Come on, Garcia. We have to get out of here.
They raced around multiple pineapples as they made a break for the exit.
I'm hungry,
moaned Garcia desperately.
You had your fill,
said Christian as he passed the final group of pineapples toward the exit.
But I need more,
complained Garcia.
Take some food before you go,
said one pineapple calmly.
Yes, perhaps a slice of bread. Or a loaf of bread. Perhaps a batch of bread.
They all raced after them as the exit got closer and closer. Christian grabbed the door handle, and to his surprise, it opened easily. He raced onto the cold metal of the docking area toward the faithful flyer.
Come back,
cried the pineapples as they raced across the metal.
We want you to stay with us. Feast until your stomach busts. Eat to your heart's content. Eat.
Can we stay?
said Garcia.
I'm hungry.
No, we cannot stay,
said Christian as he climbed aboard the hot air balloon and triggered the gas burner.
Congratulations, champion. You passed the first test,
stated the static-filled female voice as the toll gate lifted, letting the balloon pass through.
Come back,
yelled the pineapples as they made a break for the faithful flyer, which was slowly gaining altitude.
No!
Yelled Christian as he threw a sandbag off the balloon, causing their lift to increase dramatically. Within seconds, they cleared the docking port, and the young boy looked over his shoulder, just in time to see the yellow suits vanish in unison as the pineapples landed on the ground once again, 1 foot apart from each other, motionless, waiting like bait on a hook for their next victim to arrive.
Why would you deprive me of my food?
Moaned Garcia as she kept turning back toward the docking port as it faded away.
Because it was a trap,
said Christian as he fastened a handful of ropes on the balloon.
I nearly fell for it too, so there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Nearly?
Asked Garcia.
My father sent an airplane and saved us,
said Christian as he finished fastening the ropes and gazed out into space. The stars were twinkling faintly, and the empty black of space stretched as far as the eye could see.
I don't know, Christian. A paper airplane is very delicate. How could it pierce through tough skin of a pineapple?
She thought for a moment while looking at her dirty nails. Her sagging skin flapped in the mysterious breeze of space.
Besides, how do we even know those pineapples were real anyway? They probably were in our imaginations.
Christian turned to her and grasped one of the cords holding the balloon in place.
They were not an illusion,
he said with an expression of pure innocence. He turned to the radio and flipped through the static-filled stations.
There doesn't appear to be any signal in this area,
he murmured.
That's because we're in outer space,
snorted Garcia.
Besides, your balloon shouldn't be able to fly. Air doesn't exist outside the Earth's atmosphere. We're in a vacuum.
Yet we are flying on a breeze despite that,
said the boy, and Garcia rolled her eyes.
Welcome to the second test,
echoed the static-filled female voice.
Please leave your balloons at the toll. When your task is completed, you can proceed to the next test. Good luck.
They turned, and before them was a second docking port. The same metal toll stood before them, barring their passage through to the next test. The chilling cold metal shimmered in the low light of space, and a faint low hum could be heard as they approached the gate, and Christian hopped out.
Come on, Garcia, we need to complete the next challenge,
said Christian.
You go on ahead,
said Garcia with her arms crossed.
You didn't let me stay in the previous test. I see no reason to enter this one.
The young boy shrugged.
Fair enough.
With that, he skipped off toward the metal entryway with large iron letters just like before stating, Test number 2. Garcia shook her head and cracked her back as she lounged in the basket of the faithful flyer, waiting for Christian to complete the second test. The world immediately changed to monotone when Christian passed through the second entryway. Color evaporated, and Christian found himself in a strange, colorless town in a desert. The dark gray buildings reflected harsh black shadows from the bright white sun. Christian spotted a man in a cowboy hat and immediately ran over to him. He had a shimmering light gray star on his chest, an ornate vest with matching boots, and a single revolver in his belt.
Sir?
Asked Christian.
Yeah, kid?
Asked the man.
What brings you to the town of Prickleville?
I'm looking for an exit,
said Christian as he looked about the strange town.
Listen, fella. Outside here, you only find wide open spaces filled with rattlesnakes and cigarro. You should stay a while and gather supplies before heading out into the wide yonder,
said the man.
Who are you?
Asked the young boy, and the man in the hat laughed.
I'm the sheriff of this here town. I defend the townsfolk from outlaws and robbers.
Really?
Asked Christian hopefully.
That's right,
said the sheriff. He pointed to his revolver in his belt and said,
This here killed 9 of them men with 1 shot. I am feared far and wide from all over. You can call me Jimmy.
He reached out a hand for Christian to shake, and the boy looked up at the sheriff in amazement.
So you protect the town?
He asked.
I sure do,
said Sheriff Jimmy, pulling out his revolver and lazily spinning the barrel. He turned to a wooden barrel sitting upright on the porch and whispered,
Watch this.
He placed his revolver back into his belt and glared at the porch. There was a pause. Then he yelled,
Draw!
And in an instant there was a gunshot and the barrel exploded. The young boy stared at the cowboy in amazement. Somehow the revolver had been pulled faster than the blink of an eye.
And you defeated 9 people?
Asked Christian.
I sure did,
said the sheriff proudly.
I'm the best sheriff in the entire world. I am the first and the last sheriff the world will ever need.
He smiled at Christian, then said,
Walk with me.
Together, they journeyed a bit down the dusty desert town streets. Tumbleweeds passed through, kicking more dust up in their wake. The mysterious, colorless townsfolk bustled about the shimmering gray sand.
You know something, kid?
Asked Sheriff Jimmy.
I've been looking for a deputy for a long time now. I know we haven't known one another for very long, but would you be interested in defending the town with me?
Christian stared at the heroic sheriff and nodded enthusiastically, the mission to find his father forgotten for the moment.
That's dandy,
said the sheriff as he reached into his vest and pulled out another shimmering sheriff badge.
This here's for you.
Christian took the badge excitedly and placed it proudly on his chest. His face glowed with excitement as he followed his newfound hero. The sheriff straightened up, then sniffed the air.
Trouble's brewing. I can smell it.
He turned down the line of houses, then yelled,
To the bank!
Together, the duo ran down the line of houses, and Christian smiled excitedly at the cowboy, his first real fight to protect the townsfolk. Sheriff Jimmy drew his gun and yelled,
Stop in the name of the law.
They burst through the door, and 2 men grasping massive, bulging bags of cash turned to them.
It is I, Sheriff Jimmy,
shouted the sheriff as he fired 3 quick shots at the robbers. The 2 men ducked and shook with fear as Jimmy approached.
No, not Sheriff Jimmy,
they wailed as they slowly put their shaking arms up, dropping the money onto the ground with a loud thump. Click.
Hold it right there, partner.
Christian and Jimmy froze. Who had spoken?
Turn around and put him up where I can see him.
Christian and Jimmy put their hands up and slowly turned around. Standing behind them was another man in a cowboy hat with a massive, bushy black mustache and dark, sunken eyes. His dark gray face partially obscured by shadow and his overbearing cruelty.
Well, if it isn't Revolver Robbins,
snarled Jimmy.
And are those the Misfit brothers? I should have known you were behind this operation.
He stared intensely at the man with the mustache.
You know me too well, Jimmy.
spat Revolver Robbins as he toyed with the armed gun. Christian shook with fear as he stared at Robbins. He would die, and there was nothing he could do about it. What was he thinking? The good sheriff would protect him.
I'll shoot you, Jimmy,
threatened Revolver Robbins as he pointed his gun at the sheriff.
You can't threaten me like this,
laughed Jimmy as he stared down the criminal.
I will personally fire the shot that ends your career.
Oh, please. You cannot do anything right,
laughed Revolver Robbins.
All you do is boast about how good you are to your admirers. You're a nobody.
That's not true,
said Jimmy as he put his hand over his revolver.
If you draw, I'll shoot your friend,
snarled Robbins as he turned his gun on Christian, and the young boy froze. He was petrified. What were they going to do now?
Fine, shoot the kid. Just don't harm the townspeople,
laughed Jimmy, and Christian turned to the cowboy in shock. His hero, his friend? The cowboy turned to Christian, then said,
Tough look, kid. You're a spare. You don't belong here anyway.
You have a deal,
spat Revolver Robbins as he reached a black-gloved hand out for Jimmy to shake.
The boy dies in exchange for the peace of the townsfolk.
He jerked his head at the Misfit brothers and immediately heard the sounds of heavy footsteps approaching the door.
You can't be serious,
cried Christian as the two brothers aggressively grabbed him by the arms and dragged him out the door.
Why would you do this to me? I trusted you.
Jimmy smiled to himself and whispered,
Anything to protect my town.
Within seconds, Christian stood in the dusty gray streets of Prickleville. The Misfit brothers searched him thoroughly and handed him a revolver.
One bullet, one chance,
they said. They looked at each other, then nodded to Revolver Robbins. In an instant, Christian was released, and under the beat of the white sun at noon, the shootout began. A man with glasses approached Christian from the bank and said,
On behalf of Prickleville, your sacrifice is much appreciated.
He winked at Christian as the sun's red light reflected in his spectacles. What? The sun was white. Why was there a red reflection? Christian turned around. There wasn't a red light anywhere in sight. The man turned to walk away.
Hey!
Yelled Christian.
What?
Asked the man as he turned to look at him again. This time the young boy could see the distinct red glow of a neon exit sign within the reflected glassy depths of those spectacles. The question was, how to get to it? Was it invisible?
What?
Yelled Glasses as he stomped toward Christian.
Nothing, sir.
Stuttered Christian as he turned to where the exit sign should be.
Excellent,
said the man. He left the street and sat in a wooden rocking chair on an old porch.
One.
Christian thought long and hard. How was he going to get to the exit? He had only one bullet.
2.
There had to be an explanation for why the exit sign was hidden. Perhaps if he shot it?
3. Draw!
Christian ducked, turned his gun, and made a shot. In an instant, the sounds of glass shattering could be heard as a massive softbox light fell to the floor. The western town vanished, and in its place was a massive green screen, spanning the size of a small stadium. Christian turned to the massive destroyed light, and upon looking up, spotted the red glow of the exit sign. Since nobody else was here, he carefully pressed through the push door, and immediately, a female voice filled the air as the docking port was revealed once again.
Congratulations, champion. You passed the second test,
stated the static-filled female voice as the toll lifted, letting the balloon pass through. Christian sighed a sigh of relief. His heart had been pounding aggressively, and he made a mad dash for the balloon. The faithful flyer was steadily gaining altitude, and he had to hurry or he'd miss it.
Garcia!
He said.
What?
Yelled the old woman from above.
Pass me a rope!
Shouted Christian.
Got it,
replied the older woman, passing one down to him. Within moments, the young boy was pulled up, and he turned to gaze at the test vanishing behind them. His head a whirlwind as their balloon picked up, and they were off to the third test.
Well, how did it go?
Asked Garcia as she gazed at the docking station as it faded from sight.
Stressful,
said Christian as his memory replayed Jimmy's betrayal repeatedly in his mind. Why had the sheriff let him go so easily after making so many promises to him?
Really? How so?
Asked the older woman, pressing her wrinkly hands against her soot-encrusted face.
Long story.
murmured Christian.
Come on, let's continue to the third test. Dear Dad, I'm a little shaken up by the first 2 tests. Whoever designed them is certainly crafty. The pineapples and Jimmy seemed friendly until they turned on me. I'm still looking forward to meeting you again. I need your wisdom and guidance. Please help. Your son, Christian.
Still doing the letters, eh?
Asked Garcia as she gazed at Christian's letter.
Yeah.
Sighed the young boy as he folded it into a paper airplane and let it fly through space. The little aircraft flew straight as an arrow as his plea for help shot off into the universe and out of sight.
You want to talk about it?
Asked Garcia curiously.
You haven't talked much.
I don't really want to,
said Christian. The flight to the third test was silent until they finally made it to another docking station, and the familiar female voice returned.
Welcome to the third test.
Echoed the voice.
Please leave your balloons at the toll. When your task is completed, you can proceed to the next test. Good luck.
Always the same message.
Chuckled Garcia nervously.
They seriously didn't have any budget left to play different recordings?
She turned to Christian, then smiled through her many wrinkles.
Come now, Christian. Why the long face? Just because we are doing this useless adventure doesn't mean you must be sad about it.
The young boy turned to Garcia and replied,
Let's go.
They approached the entryway with the wrought iron text and entered through the door. Immediately, a shimmering golden hall greeted them, with ornate velvet rugs and jewels beyond count sitting in various shelves and boxes, overflowing as far as the eye could see. Golden rivers flowed through the ground, separated by a layer of semi-transparent crystal. Christian's eyes bugged out, staring at all the riches before him, and Garcia looked around excitedly.
Look at all of this!
She cried. She ran to a bin of small jewels and carefully pushed her hands through it.
This is amazing.
This is a trap,
retorted Christian.
You need to remember that these tests are designed to push us. You need to focus on that aspect and not just what your head wants.
But I need more money,
said Garcia as she crossed her arms.
Come on, we don't have time for sightseeing,
said Christian.
We need to find the exit to this test. That seems to be how you leave this place.
Together, they looked around the ornate golden halls of sickening riches, tempting their minds to wander to worrying places.
I don't see an exit,
said Garcia.
There's got to be one,
said Christian confidently as he looked around the hall, carefully checking every inch of the golden walls for any hint of a neon exit sign.
The last 2 tests had it. And besides, how else are we supposed to escape?
He turned and, to his amazement, the reflection of a red exit sign could be seen on a golden wall, and immediately the young boy ran toward it.
Wait for me!
Cried Garcia as she tripped over her feet to catch up.
I'm not as young as I used to be.
Christian saw the door, a massive ornate golden door with encrusted jewels. The red exit sign hung above it. What an easy test. Avoid the treasure, escape the room. Simple.
Halt.
Christian kept running. No temptation would keep him from passing the third challenge. He would see his father. He was going to his banquet. He accepted his invitation. He was going.
Halt, or you will die where you stand.
Christian stopped running and looked up. A massive guard kitted in full golden armor stood before him. A massive ruby blade pointed at the young boy's throat. The boy looked up at the guard and nervously looked around.
What do you want?
You are not permitted to leave,
stated the guard.
Why?
Asked Christian as he peered around the guard's massive armored legs.
Because you haven't passed the test,
said the guard.
Only because you won't let me,
complained Christian.
You haven't passed the test,
said the guard simply.
Come back once you have.
Christian sighed and turned to walk away.
Wait!
The boy looked up as an old man with a long gray beard sprinted for the exit.
I want out! Did the kid open the door? Let me out!
You haven't passed the test,
said the guard simply.
Come back once you have.
I have!
Yelled the man. The guard grabbed the old man aggressively and tossed him across the room into a massive pile of money, his messy rags tearing slightly as he collapsed in a heap. Christian ran over to him.
Are you all right?
I'm fine,
said the man as he slowly straightened himself up. He glared at the guard, then hobbled back to where he had been.
Wait!
Cried Christian as he chased after the old man.
What do you want?
Snapped the man.
How long have you been here?
Asked Christian.
Longer than most,
said the man.
I was on my way on the exit. Then they changed the blasted rules on me, and I cannot figure them out. I've been here for what feels like forever.
He put his head in his hands as he slumped onto the floor.
I just want to get out,
he moaned.
What were the rules before?
Asked Christian hopefully as he patted the man on the back.
All you had to do was find the exit without touching anything,
sobbed the man.
Then they changed the rules.
He looked up at Christian, then asked,
Would you like to come to my house for a bit? I haven't seen people in a very long time, you see, and...
I would be delighted,
exclaimed Christian.
You would?
Of course. Hey, Garcia, come over here,
called the young boy as Garcia approached.
Look who I just met.
The man frowned as he looked the old woman up and down.
Have we met?
What?
Asked Garcia.
I recognize you from somewhere,
said the man with a frown. He squeezed his eyes shut and pressed his fingers against his temple.
I can't recall where, though.
Well, I don't know you,
laughed Garcia.
It's probably the room playing tricks on you.
The man squinted at her, then murmured,
You're probably right. Goodness knows how long I've been in here for.
He looked up at Christian, then smiled widely.
Let's go to my place.
They traveled through the world of golden walls, past mounds of golden coins and more boxes of gems, until they reached a little hut made of shimmering cloth, perched up by 2 golden staffs. A marble sign was attached to one of the posts, with jagged, crooked wording etched into it stating, Hans' Hut.
Money is useless if you have nowhere to spend it,
said the man in response to their stares.
I learned that fairly quickly.
You didn't take any money, did you, Hans?
Asked Christian suddenly.
I would never,
cried Hans as he raised his wrinkly hands. He sighed, slowly lowered them, and murmured,
Not anymore.
He sighed again and looked at the ground and slumped on the crystal floor, watching as the liquid gold flowed underneath.
The smell, the taste, the feeling of wealth makes me sick.
He looked up at Christian and said,
I would never do it again. Honest.
He put his head in his hands.
It's not worth it.
At least you know that now,
said Christian with a kind smile.
Yes, but at what cost? I'm doomed to be trapped here forever. All because I couldn't work out what the new test was.
They stood there for a moment and thought. Everyone was clueless as to what had to be done. How could they know what to do if the goal wasn't to avoid the treasure? Hans had sprung the trap, and they could do nothing about it. What do you do if you trigger the trap?
It's hopeless,
moaned Hans as he put his head in his hands. Christian sighed and turned to Garcia grimly. Poke. Christian felt something hit the back of his head, and he jumped, fearing the guard, but instead found a dented paper airplane resting behind him. A note from his father? He immediately picked it up and unfolded it excitedly. Was he going to tell him how to escape? Was he... Charity. Christian frowned and reread the word several times. Charity. What did that have to do with their predicament? There was nobody to give anything to. He turned toward Hans as he put his head in his hands and cried. Hans already had money. It was worthless to him. What could he possibly offer?
Hey Hans, if it's all right with you, I would like to invite you to my father's banquet,
said Christian slowly. Would this work? He had to give Hans something charitable, right? This had to work. Hans looked up at the young boy and smiled. The wrinkles on his face stretched and expanded far beyond what they had in years.
Your father's banquet? Will there be food?
More food than you can imagine,
said Christian with a smile. Garcia looked from Christian to Hans, then back to Christian.
Hey, Christian, can I talk to you for a moment?
She asked nervously.
Once we exit the test,
said the young boy reassuringly.
Nicely done,
stated the guard as he leaned on his sword for support and smiled at them all.
You may pass.
He escorted the 3 toward the exit and gestured to the door.
Farewell gold, farewell gems, farewell my prison,
exclaimed Hans joyfully as they stepped out onto the docking port again as the toll lifted.
Congratulations, champion. You passed the third test,
stated the static-filled female voice. Together, the three boarded the faithful flyer and took to space again.
Here we go!
Exclaimed Hans as the docking station slowly disappeared.
I'm free! Yippee!
He gasped what seemed to be fresh air and raised his hands toward the heavens, ecstatic and free for the first time in a long time.
Look at all the stars!
He cried as he looked about the twinkling lights off in the distant black. Christian smiled and peered over the edge of the basket.
They're amazing!
Cried Hans as he rushed over to the edge of the basket too to get a better look.
Look at the constellations! That one looks like a fish!
Christian let out a childish laugh and smiled to himself. He was glad Hans was excited to meet his father at the banquet.
And that one looks like a hook! Oh! And that one looks like a...
Christian laughed more and turned to the old man. He was gone. Garcia ran over to the edge of the balloon and looked over the edge. Christian immediately looked over the edge in time to see the remaining silhouette of Hans free-falling before the darkness took him. The young boy's heart stopped and his mouth hung open. How had this happened? He turned to Garcia and the old woman seemed as shocked as he was.
He leaned too far,
murmured Garcia as she slowly looked over the edge. Her voice cracked with emotion as she spoke.
Yeah,
said Christian as his eyes welled up with tears.
I barely got to know him.
They stared over the edge in silence for a moment, both of them gazing heartbroken over the edge to where Hans had been moments before. Garcia sighed and stared out into space for a moment.
We better head for the fourth test.
Yeah,
murmured Christian, peering over the edge one last time. The memory of Hans falling to his death was etched into the back of his vision, like a looping record of astronomical proportions.
Dear Dad, we met a man named Hans today. In the third test, sadly, in his excitement, he passed away, and we can no longer go to your banquet. I'm really sorry I let you down. Your son, Christian.
The young boy wiped a few tears from his eyes and messily folded the airplane and flew out into space. The paper aircraft wavered a little but continued on its trajectory. Garcia watched as the paper airplane faded out of sight, and Christian climbed up into the balloon and looked at the letters he had received from his father. He carefully attached the two letters from his test rooms onto the walls, Run and Charity, sitting right next to many other letters he had received from his hero. There he sat for a long time. He stared at the letters in tears as the memory of Hans falling played in his mind repeatedly.
Hey, can I come up here?
Asked Garcia from down below. Christian sighed heavily and looked down at the basket.
Go ahead.
The old woman carefully climbed into the balloon and sat next to Christian, gazing at the letters before them.
What's all this?
Letters,
mumbled Christian.
I see,
murmured Garcia, looking at them all curiously.
You certain these are all from your father?
I'm certain,
said Christian confidently, as he gazed at the folded letters in his father's handwriting.
Okay,
murmured Garcia as she stared at the letters again.
When we get to the banquet, you can ask him for yourself. You'll see,
said Christian as he wiped his tear-stained eyes.
Welcome to the fourth test. Please leave your balloons at the toll. When your task is completed, you can proceed to the next test. Good luck.
Looks like we're here,
murmured Garcia.
Come on, Christian. It's time to go.
Christian nodded.
I will be right down.
Garcia nodded and lowered herself into the basket.
Don't worry, Father,
whispered the young boy. He smiled at the letters through his tear-stained eyes and carefully lowered himself into the basket and onto the docking station. The cold metal grated the two, just like before, and they passed through the entryway within moments.
All right, we'll have to be on our guard.
murmured Christian as he turned to Garcia.
You don't know what could be waiting for us here.
He turned forward and frowned. Before them were massive metal patchworks and holes in the ceiling, showing outer space above them. Sparking cables hung down from the ceiling, and various bodies lay on the ground.
What happened?
Breathed Christian, looking around at the wreckage.
What do you mean?
Asked Garcia as she looked around the massive room.
This looks wonderful.
Christian immediately jerked his head at the old woman.
Excuse me?
Look at this armchair.
Exclaimed Garcia as she excitedly ran over to a wrought iron chair with spikes sticking out at odd angles. She laid back as the cold metal dug into her back and sighed as she reclined comfortably.
That looks uncomfortable,
said Christian, his voice rattling off the metal paneling within the broken-down space station.
But it's so soft,
said Garcia as she looked around wildly. Her face split into a wide smile as she gazed at the destruction around them.
Look at these beds,
she cried as she leapt onto a metal steel table with a great crash and stretched her back.
I can finally relax.
Christian covered his ears and frowned at the old woman.
What are you talking about?
He asked.
This place is cold and creepy. Let's focus on passing the test and get out of here.
Or you could stay.
A harsh female voice cut through the thin air of the space station. Christian turned, his mouth hung open momentarily as a woman with a computer screen for a face slowly approached him. The screen woman moved so strangely, and the screen attached to her neck made her presence jarring and unnatural.
Hello, little one,
she whispered as she stared at Christian eerily. The unnerving silence of the station chilled the young boy to the bone. The young boy slowly backed away as the woman with the screen face smiled and towered over him. Her body was covered in circuit boards, blinking red lights, and wiring that sparked in every direction. What was she?
Where are you going?
She asked in a harsh mechanical voice that resonated like grinding iron.
Stay away from me,
said Christian as he quickened his retreat.
Why are you frightened, child?
Asked the woman with a crooked digital smile.
I won't hurt you.
You're scaring me,
said the young boy as he backed away faster and faster. The screen frowned and stopped.
How interesting.
She looked Christian up and down, then whispered,
Clever boy.
Immediately, a loading screen appeared, almost as if she were trying to figure something out.
Come over here, Christian. Everything's so comfy,
said Garcia as she rolled around on the metal table.
I scanned my database, and I do not believe we have been acquainted,
snickered the computer woman. She reached a metal hand out and said,
It's all right. I won't hurt you. I'm here to cheer you up.
No! Keep your hands off me.
What's the matter, Christian?
Giggled the computer woman as her digital face blushed with a charming smile.
Come back here. We are here to help you, Christian.
No!
Yelled Christian. He ran for it. Wind rushed through his hair as he made a mad dash for the glowing red exit sign at the far end of the space station.
Come back here, Christian.
Giggled the computer woman as the grinding of machinery could be heard all around as more computer people approached the young boy. Christian screamed and ran as fast as he could go.
Why don't you go over there?
They said with their outstretched hands, rapidly approaching the young, innocent boy.
Garcia, run!
Yelled Christian.
Why would I run from all these nice people?
Asked Garcia as she gazed at the computer people wide-eyed, almost as if she were bewitched.
What did you do to her?
Yelled Christian.
She's seeing everything the way it was intended to be. We did nothing to her,
said the computer woman as she approached the young boy. Her blushing smile eerily cut through the dim space station as the sounds of dial-up screeched throughout the silence like a vile, ear-splitting laugh.
Why don't you go over there, little one?
Asked the computer woman.
Yes, we'll help you get more comfortable,
cackled another computer woman as she raised her arms toward Christian.
Ah!
Yelled the boy as he ran around the robots toward the exit. He pushed on the door.
All champions must exit the test before proceeding.
The static female announcer echoed.
Come on, open!
Murmured Christian as he pulled on the door harder, the robo people advancing ever closer.
Don't you get it, Christian?
Laughed the screen woman.
Once you enter the Nexus, you can't leave. You're here for life.
There are 7 tests, and you're the 4th. I know I can escape. Don't put lies in my head,
said the young boy as he ran around the approaching zombie slow computer people. The screeching dial-up returned, accompanied by the grinding of metal as the young boy made his way around toward Garcia.
Let's go. We have to get out of here.
He yelled as more smiling computer screens could be seen approaching from the dark corners of the space station.
But why?
Giggled Garcia.
I see no reason to leave.
Garcia, I don't know what they did to you, but I don't like it. We have to go. Right now,
said Christian.
Oh, little one. It's okay. We are here to help you.
Laughed the screen woman as she approached him with outstretched arms.
I can live my life without your help,
said Christian.
And that's my final word.
The group of robots froze as the loading screens reappeared. They were processing again.
Come on, Garcia. Time to go,
murmured Christian.
But why?
I don't care,
said Christian.
Come on, we're going.
He grabbed Garcia's hand and pulled her to her feet as he weaved around the frozen robots as the creepy machines processed his words.
Bring me back!
Wailed Garcia as she approached the metal table.
We're not staying here. It's too dangerous,
said Christian as he carefully ran past dead bodies and sparking wires, weaving between robots and their flickering screens.
Eradicate the threat!
Screeched the robots as the loading screens vanished and the screen faces turned bright red. They all turned on their heels and, like zombies, approached Christian and Garcia with their arms outstretched.
Yes! Please kill me!
Laughed Garcia as madness overtook her frail, dirt-encrusted face.
Listen to yourself,
yelled Christian as he dodged and weaved robots, all while pulling Garcia through the 4th test.
You have many more years to live, Garcia. Don't let this be your final resting point. We're going to see my father, and he will give us a banquet. Do not get distracted.
Eradicate the threat!
The robots continued to chase after them through the once abandoned space station. They were advancing quicker and quicker by the second. Soon the robots with the red-faced screens were almost running, arms outstretched like the pineapples from the first test. The dial-up pierced the station, causing Christian's head to hurt. The young boy felt tears in his eyes trickle down his face as the headache continued to pummel him again and again.
Join us!
Screamed the robots, and Christian squeezed his eyes shut and took a flying leap at the door. In an instant, his body crashed through the exit, and they landed on the other side with a loud boom.
Congratulations, champion. You passed the 4th test,
stated the static female voice. The toll lifted, and the faithful flyer began to float.
Come on!
Yelled Christian as he ran toward the balloon.
Return to the Nexus, or we will kill you!
Screeched the woman. The young boy turned as he ran, and to his utter horror, the robots were climbing up the sides of the space station and climbing through and over the massive holes in the metal paneling like massive humanoid spiders. The dial-up sound split through the empty black of space.
Ah!
Yelled Christian as the robots made their way toward the faithful flyer.
Why don't we go back and talk to...
asked Garcia as she shook her head multiple times. Was the spell lifting?
Over my dead body,
said Christian as he helped the old woman into the balloon and released the sandbag. They gained altitude steadily, and the young boy sighed a sigh of relief. He turned just in time to see the robots leap off the edge of the space station, missing them by inches, and into the nothingness of space, never to be seen again.
I had it all. I was...
Garcia gazed back at the fading space station as the robots continued to fall off the edge in desperate pursuit of the balloon.
All they wanted to do was kill us,
said Christian as he checked the sandbags on the side of the basket. He placed a hand on the woman's back.
We only have 2 sandbags left. We will have to watch how we take off from this point forth. 3 challenges are remaining after all.
Garcia nodded, uninterested, as she gazed back at the 4th test.
I was a fool.
The young boy nodded slightly and replied,
Well, it happens to the best of us.
He pulled out a sheet of paper and wrote his letter.
Dear Dad, we've completed our first 4 tests. Over halfway there. I'm excited to meet and participate in your banquet. We had a slight hiccup in the 4th test. I feel like these challenges are getting harder and I'm a little nervous about completing them all. Please be with me. Your son, Christian.
He gazed down at the stars below as the fifth space station loomed closer and closer. After carefully folding the paper airplane and letting it fly, they guided the faithful flyer toward the docking port.
Welcome to the fifth test. Please leave your balloons at the toll. When your task is completed, you will be permitted to proceed to the next test. Good luck.
Like a skipping record,
said Garcia as she made her way out of the balloon, closely followed by Christian.
I know,
murmured Christian.
Look at the bright side of things. We are over halfway to my father's banquet. Doesn't that excite you?
Garcia sighed heavily.
Look, I understand the last tests were difficult, but remember, these places are designed to test us. They aren't going to be a cakewalk.
You seem to be having a high hit rate with these tests,
said Garcia curiously as she looked up somberly.
Why aren't you getting caught in their snares?
I don't know,
said the young boy thoughtfully as they approached the cold metal entryway.
I guess I know I'm safe because my father ensures my future.
Garcia sighed and gazed out into space.
I tried to listen, but sometimes cannot find it within.
She looked around and smiled at Christian.
Have faith, Garcia. You'll see. He's waiting for us in his domain. You'll get to meet him, I promise.
They stepped through the fifth entryway, and immediately many pine branches scratched into Christian's face, the sudden appearance of the branch causing Christian to shout in surprise.
Ah!
They pushed through the thick, dense trees until they emerged into a beautiful autumn clearing filled with spruce and pine trees. Their thick, deep brown stalks complemented the lush oranges and reds in the autumn leaves. A faint breeze nipped at their noses, and wildlife ran between tree trunks, causing the leaves to scatter in every direction as they scurried about in their own little worlds.
What's wrong with this place?
Asked Garcia as she looked around the forest.
This place looks just fine. Surely there isn't a test in here?
There's something important we must do here,
said Christian confidently. They trudged on through the cold autumn air as they journeyed deeper into the wilderness in search of the exit to the fifth test. Rabbits hopped about the ground and deer leapt. The young boy stopped and looked around the forest in confusion. Where was the exit? He turned to one of the deer and waved to it with a warm smile. The animal stared at him momentarily, then shook with fear and leapt away as fast as its body could go, almost as if it feared him.
That's not normal,
murmured Christian as he frowned, watching the animal gracefully leap into the forest and out of sight.
What are you talking about?
Asked Garcia.
We can relax now, Christian. It's probably a break from the action before you move on to the next test.
I don't think it is,
murmured Christian as he looked about the strange fall forest, filled with its lush reds, oranges, and yellows. They continued to wander through the mysterious autumn haven until Garcia put a hand up.
What?
Asked Christian.
We have to keep going.
Garcia silently gestured to a deer, trampling and crunching the forest leaves in the silence of the autumn glade. Garcia pulled the young boy back abruptly. Bang! A rifle shot scattered the silence, and the majestic deer stumbled and tripped on itself, causing it to collapse onto the ground. The young boy gasped, and his mouth fell open as a scruffy young woman with massive muscular arms approached the limping deer, kicked it, then dragged the dead animal back into the forest. Garcia let go of Christian, and the young boy nodded to her briefly for saving his life, then yelled at the hunter.
Hey!
In one fluent motion, the woman dropped the deer, drew her rifle, and stood her ground.
Who is it?
She barked.
You murdered that poor animal!
Finders keepers,
taunted the woman aggressively.
My score is going to be the best in the camp.
She cocked her rifle.
If you want it, you'll peel it from my cold, dead hands. I would never forgive Johnny for scoring that raccoon the other day.
Oh, Hilda!
Came a sing-song voice. Everyone turned and there stood a man, dragging a dead bear behind him. The brown grizzly fur wafted in the breeze as he waved at the woman.
That's nice. You got yourself an elk. How juvenile.
He laughed. Hilda growled and aimed her rifle at the man.
This is my score. Go get yourself another pathetic herbivore.
Laughed the man as he continued on his merry way. The woman shook with anger as she locked and loaded her gun. Had she been bluffing before?
You know human meat is the most valuable score in camp.
She snapped.
If you can get it,
cackled the man as he dragged his bear across the ground.
There isn't free meat laying around in the forest, Hilda.
The woman slowly turned to Christian Garcia, and a smile slowly crossed her face, a greedy, hateful smile that disturbed Christian.
Please, we'll do anything to help you,
cried Garcia as she put her hands up immediately.
Anything, eh?
Laughed Hilda as she aimed her rifle.
What if we helped you get more game?
Offered Garcia.
We could do an exchange for you sparing us.
The man turned.
That's not fair. Shoot them and gain your 800.
Hilda thought for a moment, then laughed, put her rifle down, and approached Christian Garcia.
Not fair, eh, Johnny? That sounds like an excellent idea to me. Jealous yet?
The man dropped his bear and scowled.
Just you wait, Hilda. I'll have the biggest score the camp has ever seen. Just you wait. You know, you still only have that elk. Ha!
He grunted and continued to drag the dead bear through the forest, pushing aside leaves with the bear carcass as he went. Hilda nodded curtly, then turned to Garcia.
You're going to help me shoot some stuff.
Yes!
Said Garcia excitedly.
Isn't that right, Christian?
The young boy looked at Garcia, then shook his head.
Then you're worth 400 apiece,
said Hilda as she drew her rifle again.
I will not hurt anything,
said Christian.
Can't you just stop comparing to Johnny and just be happy what you got?
Be content with a lousy deer? Oh, I can do so much better than that.
Laughed Hilda as she gestured for them to follow.
Come, we need to rack in the points anyway.
She led them through the forest, past firs and pines, past oaks and spruce, until they came to a camp filled with log cabins and fiery lanterns. The sounds of townsfolk talking and gruffly mumbling could be heard, and as the sun sank beneath the tree-topped horizon and the stars came out, the fires roared and the hunters gathered around a massive stone arch and lit a fire underneath it. As they approached, Christian could make out Johnny in the crowd with his bear and many others with their dead animals strewn sickeningly about the campsite. Like a massacre nobody cared to notice.
Welcome one, welcome all,
announced a voice, and the crowd got closer.
To the 2022nd daily gathering of the Hunters. As a reminder, whoever provides the biggest game with the most points will be crowned the greatest person in the camp. Anyone who loses will be mocked beyond all imagining.
There was a snicker throughout the crowd, and the announcer laughed.
Now let's see who is worthy to meet our camp provider, the dragon.
The dragon! The dragon!
Cackled the townsfolk, and Christian looked around worriedly at the vile expressions on everyone's faces. What happened to them?
Say, you look familiar,
commented Hilda. Christian turned abruptly. Hilda was talking to Garcia.
I don't know you,
said Garcia as she shrugged her shoulders passively.
No, I think I know you though,
said Hilda.
You traveled with me in my balloon.
Balloon?
Asked Christian suddenly.
You're an aeronaut too?
Of course,
spat Hilda sharply.
We all used to be aeronauts, then gave up. We settled in this forest and made it our home. At least we aren't mind-controlled by that freak computer thing or eaten alive by fruit.
She chuckled, and Christian stared at her in shock for a second.
Why would you give up?
He asked.
Because there's no way out of this false reality,
said Hilda with a laugh.
We all made it beyond the 6th test and traveled through the emptiness of space. Those that chickened out came back here. Those that continued never came back.
She sighed and checked her rifle.
There is nothing beyond the 6th test. It's all a lie, all of it. It isn't worth wasting your life over.
But what about the letters from my dad?
Asked Christian.
Surely it means something.
I never received any letters from my dad,
said Hilda as she checked her rifle.
But wouldn't you want to hear from him?
Asked Christian.
He's either abandoned me or he's gone,
said Hilda as she spat in her rifle to clean the barrel.
Grow up, kid. He's not real.
That's not true,
said Christian.
You'll see. I promise he's real, and I'll bring you to him.
Hilda chuckled and murmured.
If you say so.
She looked up and squinted at Garcia.
I swear I've met you before. You're certain you didn't ride with me in a balloon? You appeared on the radio and...
The totals are in,
the announcer stated as he raised a massive log above his head.
The winner goes to Johnny!
Everyone scowled at the man as he dragged his bear to the log podium and said,
Thank you, one and all. I'm the best, and you're not.
He laughed himself and spoke.
I shall present my bear as a gift to the dragon.
Very well,
the announcer said.
As you all know, thanks to our superior technology, we've hacked into the universe to create a link between tests 5 and 6.
Christian jerked his head up and stared at the arch again.
Jordan, ignite the portal.
There was a loud spark, and in an instant the arch filled with a deep scarlet red as puffs of smoke erupted from its entrance. It remained like this for a couple moments, and then a massive dragon peered its head out of the archway.
Hello?
He growled.
What do you want?
Here's your supper,
said the man as he offered the bear to it. Christian felt sick watching this turn of events unfold and tried to look away from it all. How dare they do this? To abandon their invitation to the banquet and build a civilization for themselves. Was it true? Was there no 7th test? The dragon bent down, sniffed the bear, and chomped it up and returned through the portal. The red vanished, and the archway returned to normal in an instant. The young boy stared at it, petrified in fear for a moment, as he gazed at the angry hunters around him.
Well, tomorrow's another day. Prepare your rifles and get some shut-eye,
stated the announcer.
We begin again at dawn.
At dawn, at dawn,
the hunters chanted.
I still can't believe Johnny won,
growled Hilda as she led Christian and Garcia toward one cabin.
Where's the exit to this test?
Asked the young boy hopefully.
Oh, it's over there,
said Hilda, gesturing to a tree off to one side, with an ornate oak door within its coarse bark depths.
You won't be able to use it, though. The exit only works if every champion completes the challenge. That's why we use the portal to get to and from the 6th test.
As they approached Hilda's cabin, there were only 2 things on Christian's mind. Get to the portal and slay the dragon. Christian had the worst night's sleep that night in a long time. He had never been in a test this long and wanted to leave more than ever. Twice he tried sneaking out during the night to pass through the exit with no success. Unfortunately for him, every challenger had to pass the test for him to leave. He lay in bed, thinking about how he could slay the dragon from the 6th test. He reached into his coat, pulled out a sheet of parchment, and began writing a letter.
Dear Dad, I'm scared. We're stuck in the 5th test, and I have to slay a dragon to escape. Also, there's a talk there is no 7th test. Can you help me get through this trying time? Please write back. I want to hear from you again. Your son, Christian.
The airplane was released, and the young boy tried to get back to sleep. He tossed and turned. So many people had turned back to test 5. Could it be true? Could there only be 6 tests? Then where was the 7th test if there were only 6? Questions tumbled in the adolescent's mind as he lay there, wide awake. A torchlight flashed past the cabin window, and the young boy turned. Someone was up. He cautiously got up and peered out the window as the figure of Johnny slowly approached the massive arch that connected the 2 tests. What was he up to? Christian immediately put on his shoes, snuck out of the cabin, and watched as Johnny activated the portal. Red smoke filled the entryway, and to the young boy's surprise, he stepped inside. Christian suspected something was up and approached the arch and stepped into the red smoke. The intense heat and the smell of bubbling magma greeted him as his feet found burning stone ground. Sharp, jagged rocks stuck out at odd ends, and he had to be careful not to tear anything as he cautiously felt his way through the massive red smoke.
Johnny!
Growled the booming, vile voice of the dragon.
You're late!
The ground shook as the monster's echo rumbled the foundation of the 6th test.
I'm sorry, sir. I was held back by one of the watchmen,
said Johnny.
But be quicker next time,
hissed the dragon. Christian cautiously made his way around a corner, and there, standing in the center of a red smoky clearing, was the dragon with Johnny standing on a precipice, gazing up at this horrific sight. He had a feeling there was something off about Johnny.
What do you need me to do?
Asked Johnny.
During my last visit, I noticed you have acquired new hunters,
said the dragon.
They threaten the existence of the false reality. I want them dead. Signal the others if you have to. Is that understood?
But sir, you're already too involved in—
I am aware of that. Keep your voice down,
hissed the dragon as his glowing scarlet eyes scanned the area.
What is it?
Asked Johnny.
Nothing,
said the dragon.
Leave me now. There's something I need to do.
But—
Just take out the threat. That's all for now. Now go!
Johnny nodded and made his way back toward the arch. It suddenly occurred to Christian that the arch would close when Johnny stepped back through and immediately made a break for it. He didn't want to stay in the 6th test alone with the dragon. He needed Garcia with him. He needed supplies. He needed—
Well. If it isn't Christian Z. Wattson,
growled the dragon, and the young boy's blood turned to ice. He slowly turned around, and there was the dragon glaring down at him. The massive beast had thick black horns, glowing scarlet eyes, and shimmering red scales, coming together to form a figure that freaked the young boy out.
What's wrong, boy? You nervous?
Growled the dragon. Its red eyes scanned him up and down as Christian tried to back away.
You didn't hear anything I cared about,
laughed the dragon. It flapped its wings and flew into the air, causing Christian to fall to the ground from the shockwave of its wings. The beast landed on the precipice with a thunderous crash, and the rocky world shook momentarily.
What are you doing here snooping around, eavesdropping on conversations that you aren't a part of?
His scarlet eyes and horrific form towering over Christian, its massive shadow cast over him like an unending nightmare that refused to leave. The dragon reached out and grabbed Christian with its massive black claws in one fluent motion and whipped him around in the air. The young boy screamed as the monster laughed maniacally.
Just messing around,
it growled as it casually blew flames near the young boy's face, missing him by inches.
Now quit journeying to a banquet that doesn't exist, idiot,
growled the dragon.
If I catch you journeying there again, I will send my servant Johnny to assassinate you. Is that understood?
No,
yelled Christian.
Oh, you're a difficult one, aren't you?
Cackled the dragon as it continued to toss Christian up into the air.
There isn't a 7th test, you know. I'm the final stop. I am your destiny.
You are not my destiny,
yelled Christian as he soared through the air again.
I'm going to reach my father's banquet, and you're not stopping me.
Oh, really?
Roared the dragon as it brought its massive claws down around him like a massive cage.
Then I'll hold you here until you rot. I've survived for many millennia. A human life is nothing compared to me.
Christian shook all over as he stared into the frightening eyes of the dragon as it leered at him with its massive scaly face. Its scarlet eyes burned with hatred as it gazed down upon him.
Give up, Christian, or die. It's your choice.
The young boy frantically tried to climb out of the claws, but the dragon only laughed.
If you want to climb out, be my guest.
It growled sickeningly as it held the young boy over the pit of steaming magma below.
It's your funeral and no one's invited.
It looked around, letting out a booming laugh that shook the volcanic world.
Where's your father now, Christian? I don't see him.
He will rescue me,
murmured the young boy as tears welled up in his young face.
I know he will.
Ha!
Boomed the dragon as it breathed another burst of fire, missing the young boy by inches.
He's not coming, stupid. I don't believe you've ever met your so-called father. Who is he anyway?
It let out another thunderous laugh that shook the volcano and roared.
Where is he, boy? Tell me, where is he?
He blew flames past the young boy, and the child cried, petrified by the nightmare as the shadows surrounded him.
Tell me, who is your father?
It opened its mouth, and flames erupted out of it, flying faster and faster toward Christian, this time to kill. The young boy squeezed his eyes shut as the imminent death quickly approached. It happened suddenly. A massive explosion erupted, and a gasp of rage from the dragon. Christian opened his eyes in time to see a massive paper airplane, easily the size of a dragon's wing, crash through the side of the volcano with the words, "I am," printed in bold across its surface, its sharp point advancing toward the wing in nightmare, faster than the speed of sound. The dragon released Christian, the young boy free fell toward the magma below. The airplane dive-bombed, swiftly caught at his fall, and brought him to safety, then boomeranged back towards the monster.
Get out!
Roared the dragon as it breathed flames toward the paper airplane. The paper construct caught fire, and the angry orange flames instantly erupted into a brilliant white and pressed on without being consumed.
Stay away!
Roared the dragon as it flew around the volcano, trying to avoid the sharp projectile as it came ever closer.
Stop that!
Roared the dragon as it angrily tried to bash the projectile. The airplane dove down one last time, its aerodynamic form cut through the air like a boat through glassy waters. Its white flames illuminated a brilliant light as it came into contact with the monstrous beast. An anguishing roar burst forth from the dragon as it breathed its last, and slowly fell down, down, down toward the magma below. The words, "I am who I say I am," were burned in bright white into the red dragon's dead body as it fell faster and faster toward the ground below. There was a deafening thud, then silence. The young boy stared at where the dragon had been moments before, then let out a massive cheer. His father had replied. He knew he would. Why had he let doubt slip into his mind? That dragon had been very crafty. The dragon knew something about the false reality. Had he heard it correctly? Had it mentioned it had created the false universe? Thoughts tumbled about in the young boy's mind. Fortunately for him, there was only one test left. Then it would all be over. He turned around only to see Garcia and Hilda staring dumbfounded at him.
"The dragon's dead!" exclaimed
Christian.
"My father slayed it. We just have one test left. If we could hurry, we can still make it to the banquet."
"Well, I'll be,"
murmured Hilda as she looked around the edge of the precipice and gazed at the vague figure of the dragon with the shimmering white text still embossed onto its scaly skin. She turned to look up at Christian.
"He really does reply to your letters."
"He always has,"
said Christian joyfully.
"Look!"
He pointed to a neon red exit sign through the dissipating red smoke.
"Let's go!"
He excitedly ran toward the exit with Garcia and Hilda close behind.
"Congratulations, champion. You passed the test,"
stated the static-filled female voice.
"We have noticed you accidentally left your vessel at test 5. No matter. We are calling for it now. Please stand by while our state-of-the-art toll towers bring your vessel forth."
They passed through the door and made their way out of the space station and onto the cold metal paneling of the docking station, just as the faithful flyer made its way toward the toll and the gate closed.
"Your vessel has arrived,"
stated the static-filled voice.
"Please proceed to the 7th test."
Christian climbed into the balloon with Garcia and Hilda and took off once again into the emptiness of space. 6 down, 1 to go. Christian couldn't wait. As the 6th test slowly faded away, Christian excitedly looked around the empty space before him. 1 space station left. 1 left. He couldn't believe how well everything had gone. They would make it. The tests were getting progressively harder, but with his father's help, Christian knew he could overcome whatever the dragon had crafted up.
Wow. The beyond is so much more than I remembered it being,
sighed Hilda, putting her hair into a bun and cracking her back.
"We're going to the banquet,"
exclaimed Christian excitedly as they pressed on toward the 7th test.
Yeah,
murmured Garcia as she gazed over the edge of the balloon, lost in thought.
That was a close one back there, Christian. You need to watch yourself. We don't want you getting hurt.
The young boy turned to Garcia and smiled at her warmly.
"Thank you, Garcia,"
he said.
"I'm glad to see you have lived by faith."
He eagerly climbed into the balloon's canopy and looked around at the letters from his father once again. He joyfully looked around and the biggest smile formed across his youthful face. He was finally going home. He picked up a handful of letters from his dad and read them several times in his head as he sighed and waited for the sounds of the static-filled voice announcing their arrival. Time flew by, and minutes turned into hours. Hours felt like days. Soon Christian wondered if it was his imagination or if they weren't arriving. He climbed back down and found Garcia and Hilda resting their heads against the edge of the balloon's basket, fast asleep. The balloon rocked gently through the dark nothingness of space. Had they passed it? Had they missed the 7th docking port? A voice in the back of Christian's mind reminded him that many believed there wasn't a 7th test, but he shook this thought out of his head. The balloon continued onward. The young boy looked around desperately for anything resembling a space station. Their search continued for a long while, but Christian refused to give up this easily. They had come this far. Why would he stop searching now?
Where is it?
Hilda slowly opened her eyes and sighed.
I tried to tell you, Christian. There is no 7th test. We can turn back to test 5 if you'd like. The dragon is no more. There is nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about?
Exclaimed Christian.
You seriously would rather sit around waiting while your life passes rather than to see your father again?
Hilda's right,
said Garcia as she slowly opened her eyes.
We came this far for nothing. It's not your fault, Christian. You didn't know.
Yeah, you're right,
said Hilda as she got up from where she sat and looked over the edge of the balloon.
Not a single station in sight. We'd better turn around before we're lost completely.
I agree,
said Garcia.
But what about the banquet?
Asked Christian.
I will not give up this easily. Please, listen to me. Can we try a little longer?
Hilda sighed.
All right, but only for a little longer.
What? Why?
Asked Garcia suddenly.
We'll get lost if we go any further. We must turn back. You said that people disappeared without a trace beyond this threshold. We must leave immediately.
It's okay, Garcia. I understand. You're stressed,
said Christian as he smiled warmly at the old woman with her soot-encrusted skin.
We have to have faith.
But
if we don't find anything, we'll turn around,
said Hilda.
It's that simple.
Garcia opened her mouth to speak, then sighed.
All right. Fine. You clearly made up your minds.
She sighed and put her hands into her pockets. Christian turned and gazed out the balloon basket. Hilda followed suit, their eyes peeled for anything vaguely resembling a space station.
You're right, Christian. We have to have faith,
said Hilda with a smile as she gazed at the faint twinkle of stars and the swirl of nebulas off in the distance.
The universe. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
murmured Christian. They stood silently for a second, gazing out into the dark expanse before them.
Ah!
Christian turned just in time to see Hilda fall over the edge of the basket.
I'll pull you up!
He yelled as he ran over to the edge. The young woman was hanging on desperately to the edge of the basket.
Christian, duck!
She yelled. The young boy turned in time to see Garcia swing a punch at him from behind.
What's wrong with you?
Yelled Hilda as she slowly made her way back into the basket.
I'm sorry,
stuttered Garcia as she looked around wild-eyed at the two.
I tripped and...
Convenient you tripped right into me just as I leaned over,
said Hilda crossly.
That didn't seem like an accident, Garcia.
That's ridiculous,
said Garcia.
You don't believe her, do you, Christian? You just told me I had learned to walk by faith. How can you allow this hunter to walk on me like this?
Christian frowned as he gazed into the older woman's eyes. She looked scared, and he smiled at her reassuringly.
I'm sure it was an accident.
An accident?
Cried Hilda.
She tried to kill me. She tried to push me out of the balloon.
Out of the balloon? Garcia? His friend? Christian had doubts about Garcia before, but she had changed. She was taking these tests more seriously now that they were getting closer to the banquet.
Hilda, I think we all need to calm down,
said Christian calmly.
I'm sure there's a logical explanation for what happened.
Thank you,
replied Garcia with a sigh. She shot Hilda a nasty look.
You're just like Hans. He always accused me of everything.
What?
Asked Christian as he looked up at Garcia.
Hans never accused you of anything.
Hans knew me before I met you,
replied Garcia with a shrug.
He flew in my balloon, and he got lost on our way back.
But you said you've never met Hans before the third test,
said Christian.
Are you sure? I don't remember saying that,
said Garcia.
Yeah, and you flew with me too, remember?
Snarled Hilda as she pulled out her gun.
How many people have you flown with?
Christian stared at the older woman, her soot and reddened eyes. Garcia had known about Hans? She attempted to push Hilda out of the balloon, almost as if...
Wait a minute,
he whispered. He slowly raised a finger at Garcia as his eyes grew wide.
What?
Asked Garcia as she put her hands up.
Why are you two ganging up on me all of a sudden?
You murdered Hans, didn't you?
Garcia froze for a moment. There was a silence between the three aeronauts as Christian heard Hilda cock her gun. Then a smile curled across Garcia's face, and she gave another little shrug.
He knew too much.
She growled at Hilda as the hunter put her hands up defensively while backing up a little in the cramped balloon basket.
You know too much too, Hilda.
Bang! The gun went off like a firecracker, but the bullet sailed off into space, missing Garcia by inches.
I thought I recognized you from somewhere,
murmured the hunter nervously as she tried to reload her gun in the cramped balloon basket.
So, tell me, Garcia, how many people have you murdered before they reached the 7th test?
There is no 7th test,
snarled Garcia. She lunged at them. Hilda smacked her to the ground, and the old woman wailed and shriveled to the ground as her beaten and broken body gave for a moment. She cowered in the corner of the balloon as Hilda advanced.
You're not leaving this reality,
she roared, and immediately Garcia drew 2 knives from her cloak and swung them around violently, causing Christian and Hilda to back up at once.
Get back! I'll murder you both, and the others will be none the wiser,
she cackled. She swung at the young boy and the hunter aggressively with her 2 blades as she desperately tried to put them out of commission. Thwack! The first rope holding the basket to the balloon snapped. Christian desperately tried to grab the rope and fasten it back to where it was. Hilda held off Garcia's advance as the second rope went thwack. The basket jolted forward as it dangled sideways by 2 ropes on the left side. Garcia loomed over Christian and Hilda as they stared up at her fearfully. Thwack! The third rope snapped.
I trusted you,
said Christian as he desperately tried to climb up the basket.
I thought you were a changed person.
You are never going to see your father, Christian,
screamed Garcia, completely ignoring the young boy's cry.
You are never leaving my illusion. Mark my words.
Her blade came down and the last rope snapped. The murderer grabbed the dangling ropes from the balloon and she sailed away into the air, taking all of Christian's letters from his father with her, while the young boy and the hunter fell down, down, down into the ever-expanding darkness of the universe. Christian gazed up one last time at his balloon full of letters drifting away before there was a great crash, and his vision blacked out. It would be many hours before Christian's vision would return to him. The ringing from the fall was still whistling in his ears as he slowly regained consciousness. It was dark within the empty black of space. The stars twinkled on the black ground as he took in the darkness surrounding him. Garcia had betrayed them. How could she? After all they had been through together, why now? He looked around as he slowly got to his feet and searched for Hilda.
Hello?
No response. Only the faint rustling of the wind could be heard within the darkness.
Hilda!
Still no response as his voice resonated within the empty black. He made his way around, groping in the dark in desperation as he tried to find his way. He found cold metal and felt his way around it, a prick of something sharp. The young boy jerked his hand back instinctively and shook it as unseen blood trickled out of his finger. He squinted as his eyes adjusted steadily to the low light. He was standing in what seemed to be a wreckage. Sharp metal and warped bars could be seen dotted about the dimly lit world. What had he crashed into?
Hello?
He shouted. His voice echoed throughout the mysterious dark, but nobody replied. The The young boy shivered as he sat down, folding his arms together to keep warm. It was cold down here. A heaviness in the air that lacked hope, joy, and love. Only despair and torment. Just when he was beginning to trust Garcia, only to discover she had betrayed them all along. He had trusted her.
Christian?
The young boy looked up as Hilda approached him.
Christian! It's really you! Come on, I found something.
Maybe later,
sighed Christian as he sat down on the cold, unforgiving ground.
What's the matter?
Asked the hunter as she frowned to look at him.
Who are you?
Both Hilda and Christian looked up, and the young boy's head spun. Another Hilda was standing before them. The clone was identical to the first, from the hunter's attire down to the hair. A perfect replica.
What the?
Began Christian.
She's a fake. I can take her out if you stay still,
said the second Hilda as she cautiously approached the first Hilda.
What? First Garcia? Now you? What is happening?
Cried the first Hilda.
It's all right, Christian. I'm not going to hurt you,
said the second Hilda as she drew her rifle.
Just stay still.
Christian looked up at the first Hilda and pulled away from her.
Christian, come on. We have to get out of here. It's not too late to attend your father's banquet.
What's the use?
Asked Christian as he sighed and put his head in his hands.
Garcia stole my balloon and there's no 7th test.
What are you saying, Christian?
Cried the first Hilda as she shoved the second out of the way.
Hey!
Yelled the second Hilda.
Don't listen to her, Christian. She's a trick designed to fool you. She's here to convince you there's hope when there is none. You rotten liar!
Snapped the first.
No, you are,
whispered Christian as tears welled up in his youthful eyes.
What?
Asked Hilda as the second hunter took aim.
The real Hilda would not be as enthusiastic as you. You must be the fake.
No, Christian, you showed me the light again. I truly believe we are only at another bump in the road. We can still make it if we hurry. Don't let her lies fill your head, Christian,
cautioned the second Hilda as she peered through the eyepiece of her rifle.
Don't worry, I'll save you.
Tell me something only Hilda would know,
said Christian as he slowly looked up at the second Hilda.
That's an easy one. You are Christian Z. Wattson, an aeronaut on a quest looking for your father. You journeyed with your friend Garcia for most of the trip.
Oh,
said Christian as he slowly got up and approached the Hilda with the rifle.
Well, if that's the case.
He immediately yanked the gun out of the woman's hand and snapped it against his knee. The rifle went off with a bang and evaporated into smoke.
You're the imposter. Garcia betrayed us, and she's no longer my friend.
The second Hilda contorted horribly and hissed.
Very
clever boy. Her legs and arms fused themselves to her body, and a forked tongue poked out of her mouth briefly as the false Hilda contorted into that of a massive, thick black creature with yellow slit eyes and shimmering scales. A snake.
Sit back down, supper.
The snake hissed as she slithered toward the young boy and the hunter.
Wait in your sorrows, drift in your unbelief.
You have no power over us,
yelled Hilda. The snake cackled and advanced toward them.
You don't have any power over us,
shouted Christian as he stood up a little straighter.
You're not real.
The snake stared at them briefly, then contorted horribly and turned to dust. The adolescent turned to Hilda and smiled widely.
Let's go get that balloon back. We are attending that banquet, whether Garcia lights it or not.
I concur,
said Hilda with a warm smile.
Congratulations,
stated a distorted female voice.
Good. Test.
Static filled the darkness as the familiar voice of the announcer from the previous tests filled the air. Lights came on and the wreckage around them was illuminated. The rubble of a space station lay on a matte black ground. Shimmering projections of stars could be seen dancing across the ground they walked upon.
Are you seeing this?
Whispered Hilda as she gazed at the destruction of the 7th test.
Yeah,
murmured Christian.
Sabotage.
Indeed,
exclaimed a voice. They turned, and Christian's face filled with a bright, warm smile. A familiar face was strapped in fine armor made of pure starlight, equipped with a shield encrusted in gold. An older face. It was the face of Hans. the bigger.
Hans!
Exclaimed Christian as he ran toward his friend.
Yes, it is I,
said the old man as he leaned on his blade with a warm smile.
Garcia dropped too many people down here,
chuckled Hans as he pointed through the evaporating darkness.
She'll be whistling a different tune fairly soon.
Shimmering armor-clad people slowly faded into view through the darkness, and Christian stood up a little straighter.
Which was the plan all along,
exclaimed Colonel Katz as he stepped out from behind the wreckage.
The battle is nearly over, and now it's time to approach the royal gates. Again, congratulations, champions. You are now ready and fully prepared to attend the king's banquet.
He saluted Christian and smiled at him formally in his high-ranking uniform. In an instant, the sounds of stones sliding across each other could be heard, and they all turned to see a massive doorway opening up out of nowhere as a brilliant white exit sign flickered to life. The colonel smiled at the young boy's awestruck face and said quietly,
"He is waiting for you."
The young boy smiled back and nodded. Without a second thought, he ran toward the exit, his heart leaping with excitement. His steps quickened as his spirit soared with joy and gladness. As the sight of arms open wide could be seen beckoning him for a hug, the young boy smiled widely and leapt toward the door.
"Gotcha!"
screamed Garcia as she snatched the young boy's foot. Christian had missed the door by inches.
"Naughty boy!"
snarled the woman as her wild, bloodshot eyes, yellow teeth, and dirt-encrusted skin observed him carefully.
"You can't leave my illusion. Oh, no, no, no. The fun is only just beginning."
She let out a cackle and sprouted wings, taking the young boy into the air. "Christian!" yelled Hilda as she ran after him from the ground, all while Garcia cackled. Her bloodshot eyes turned scarlet as she raised the young boy to the air.
"So this is where you have all been hiding,"
she snarled. She tossed him around like the dragon had done in the 6th test. The young boy felt sick as he was thrown around like a throw pillow into the air. His stomach felt queasy and sick.
Who are you really?
He gasped through his queasy stomach, and Garcia roared with laughter, causing the stars in the false reality to tremble with fear.
"Who am I? Who am I?"
she roared as her head sprouted a massive red scaly dragon's head.
"I am the rage and ire when you feel confronted."
Another head sprouted from her neck, and Johnny the Hunter's head came forth.
"I am the envy you feel for others,"
he snarled. Another neck blossomed as a computer screen appeared, and the digital female face blushed as she stared at Christian.
"I'm the intoxication your heart desires."
2 more necks blossomed to display Sheriff Jimmy and the head of a golden statue.
"We are your prideful, greedy intentions."
The pineapple sprouted from a great leafy stalk.
"I'm the one who satisfies your stomach's urges."
Last, the black serpent slithered out of the remaining gap in Garcia's neck.
"And I ensure you will never get anywhere in life."
The 7 heads laughed at Christian as they all bore down upon him. Their necks swayed chaotically as their eyes all glowed scarlet, and the forked tongues slipped in and out of their many mouths.
"We have capital vices, preventing you from being with your father."
Christian felt the dragon's claws grip him tightly as the 7-headed monster flapped its wings more aggressively, taking him higher and higher into the air. They all cackled as they tossed the young boy about, laughing, roaring, and jeering at his futile attempts to ward off their many faces.
You can't defeat us,"
they stated in unison.
"You will never escape our construct you call life. You will never be with your father."
Christian looked past them as a paper airplane came soaring toward them. The heads all swayed out of the way, laughing at the airplane's graceful descent to the young boy. Christian grabbed the airplane and unfolded it. Written simply on its blank surface were the words, "You got this." Christian looked from the airplane, then back to the Capitol Vices, then back to the airplane.
"So this is what your father gives you to defend yourself?"
roared the dragon with laughter.
"Certainly pathetic. I could do better than that,"
laughed the sheriff.
"Give up, Christian,"
hissed the serpent.
"Give in to your desires,"
stated the computer screen.
"Give in to your wants,"
continued the pineapple.
No,
yelled Christian as he looked around fearlessly at all the heads. He was so close, and he wasn't going to give up. Not this time. The heads gnashed their teeth at him and growled.
Then you shall die,
roared the dragon as it opened its mouth and breathed fire at the young boy. Christian held up his paper airplane.
I'm willing to be patient,
he said.
What?
Roared the dragon.
You must have everything now.
No, I don't,
said Christian. In one fluent motion, he swung the airplane, and the paper construct morphed into a glistening sword encrusted with fine jewelry, and it sliced the dragon's head clean off. The other 6 heads gasped.
He wields the king's weapon,
gasped the pineapple.
But he doesn't know how to use it,
giggled the computer woman as she brought her screen over to him while blushing obnoxiously.
What are you gonna do about me, Christian? I'm in your biology.
No, you are not,
said Christian.
All you want to do is harm people. I always treat people with respect.
The screen woman gasped, and the king's blade came around, and her screen came off and fell to the ground. Wires sparked out of where it had been moments before.
But you can never guarantee your accomplishments won't go unnoticed,
sneered Sheriff Jimmy.
You will never stop the need to flex.
Not if I display humility,
said Christian as he sliced the sheriff's head too.
You cannot stop yourself from overeating?
Began the pineapple. Slice.
You will always hoard your money.
Slice.
Now hold on there, Buster,
chuckled Johnny as he smiled coldly at Christian.
We've all been in that situation where you just want what someone else has. I know my bear is worth quite a bit, and...
with gratitude on my side, why bother?
Laughed Christian. Slice. The black serpent slithered out of Garcia's body and glided across Christian's arm.
Are you certain you have it all figured out?
It hissed.
I have dealt with your kind before. I can do it again.
Its forked tongue flicked in and out as it spoke.
Just give up. Why not relax? Perhaps take a bite of a fruit. Perhaps you know things better than your father does. Perhaps you can find your way around life without his help.
Christian raised the sword but hesitated. He was struggling to find a counter to this one. Doing things his way did sound appealing. The snake slithered closer to his face.
Think about it, Christian. You can be the master of your destiny, the ruler of your fate. Your
light flooded Christian's vision, and a strong, broad-shouldered man stepped out of an ornate, light-filled hall, his kind eyes radiating with a light that filled every crevice in the wretched false reality Christian had called home. Boom, 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 went his footsteps. He brought a massive, strong hand down, grabbed the snake tightly, and slowly brought the repulsive creature up so he could see it clearly.
Stay away from my son,
he said. The snake shook with fear, and the broad-shouldered man gripped the snake tighter.
Please, I'll do anything. I promise.
It hissed.
Get out,
thundered the man. He gripped the snake tighter, and the black scales began to melt like wet paint. The serpent slowly collapsed into a puddle. Then it caught fire. Screaming in anguish as it slowly burned from the inside, it vanished in a puff of embers and ash. The man shook his hands to get the rest of the embers and ash off of him. Then he beamed at Christian as he scooped the child up in his arms.
You did it.
He let out a hearty, boomy laugh. His eyes radiated with pure joy as he gave Christian a high five and exclaimed,
You did it, Christian. I couldn't be prouder of you.
He laughed some more, then said excitedly,
Follow me, my child. We shall feast. We shall all gather in thanksgiving, for you have all made it. You have all made it to paradise.
He gently set Christian down and led him by the hand through the doorway, closely followed by the rest of his children, flying in red and white balloons through the gate. On the other side of the ornate entryway was an enormous banquet hall so massive it was impossible to see the end. Beautiful architecture covered every square inch of this perfect hall, and the young boy's smile radiated with pure joy as he eagerly sat at the table. Trumpets played a celebratory fanfare as his father sat down at the head of the table, with a younger man sitting at his right. The king has vanquished the enemy! Let the ruler live forever! Cheered the crowd. Glasses were raised and cheerful conversation spread throughout the hall as everyone feasted in fellowship with one another. The king's presence lightened every burden and vile intent, for darkness had passed at the gate, and now was the time for celebrating. Christian turned to the man sitting next to the king.
My name is Savior,
said the man as he helped himself to a bagel.
I've been with you for the entire journey.
You have?
Asked Christian as he gazed in awe at the young man.
Indeed,
said the man, smiling at the young boy.
I'm the one who installed the exit signs.
You are?
I was always one step ahead of Garcia to ensure she would never lay a finger on you or anyone else.
He said pleasantly as he took a sip from his cup.
Though you were tested, you were never pushed beyond what you could already handle.
He chuckled to himself.
I hope you are enjoying your stay here as much as I am.
The young boy nodded and excitedly grabbed a handful of grapes. The food at the banquet differed from any other food he had ever tasted. Unlike the food in the first test, this food satisfied his hunger and filled him with a warm, fuzzy feeling. They feasted in the ornate banquet hall for a long time, in a city so majestic words couldn't describe it, in a land void of evil ruled by one fair-minded king, who was and is sovereign over everything. With the false reality destroyed and the capital vices vanquished, there was no suffering, nor sorrow, hate, nor war, not even a shred of what was. The world had been made right, and now the celebrations could begin. Though I would love to continue to tell you about this beautiful city's wonders, I'm afraid that is a place you'll have to discover for yourself. In a realm of pure gold with a garden in the center, where pure rivers run and all are filled with joy and peace. Christian resided in this wonderful place with his father for the rest of time. And that, my friend, is the tale of Christian Z. Wattson. The end.